Okay, good afternoon, dear panelists and the audience. My name is Rishi Kapil, and I am a college professor and a practitioner of maybe the future of work. And today we are here for a very, very interesting conversation, which is being hosted by the GI group. And the topic talks about paradigms of work 2.0. Just to introduce the topic, we all have been looking at a lot of transactional as well as contemporary changes in the last couple of years on the way the work happens. So whether it is in terms of the remote or hybrid work, whether it is in terms of the nature of employment, whether it is in terms of the diversity and inclusion aspects of the work, everything is changing. And today with the panelists, we are going to ask them to appraise us on how the industry is looking at these transactional and contemporary changes in the future of work, which we denote as Work 2.0. And we have a mix of industry practitioners and academicians who will basically be able to make this exciting as well as very, very realistic for us. So just hold on to your thoughts and ensure that whatever is the information coming out from the session is of use for not just understanding but practicing it as well. And with that, I would like to invite Sonal Arora, the leader of GI, who's basically the person who's been conceptualizing and evangelizing the program to set the context, and then we'll take it forward from there. Dear Sonal, over to you.
Thank you so much, Rishi, and very warm welcome to our panelists, Ketan, Satinder, Preeti, Dr. Shikha. Thank you so much for joining with us as we explore this aspect of what we call sustainable conversations on work. If I just bring to perspective why we do this series of webinars, and we have been doing them for last 2 years. This is our 10th, event, the 10th conversation on the concept of sustainable work that we are having. As an organization, obviously, as you all know, we are a HR services company, and a part of our larger mission is to contribute to the evolution of the labor market within the markets, the countries that we operate in. So essentially, apart from that aspect, we do believe that there is a need to ensure a sustainable framework, a sustainable ecosystem for providing skilling and employment for years, for decades, centuries, because this is that's going to stay with us as a human society, as a country, as an economy, whatever you want to call it, forever. And especially when you talk of a young, populous, developing country like India, we are going to need skilling jobs for decades on end, and hence these conversations to ideate with experts like you, industry experts, academia, to understand how we can ensure that a sustainable ecosystem of making meaningful work available to people on an ongoing basis, dealing with the challenges that come our way by way of, let's say, pandemic or social disruption or economic disruption, how we can sort of deal with it in a resilient way. And hence we call these dialogues as conversations on sustainable work. This is actually, as I said, the 10th event that we are doing. And in the last 10 or 9 events rather, we have ideated on skilling ecosystems, learning and development ecosystems, how managers can support, and all kinds of nuances and dimensions on the concept of work and work life and sustainable work. But if we look at last few years especially, and maybe I would say post-pandemic, our relationship, our equation with work itself is changing. Workplaces are changing, working models are changing, the constructs of what we call formal employment, informal employment is changing, how workspaces operate is changing. Hybrid work, remote working, new elements are coming in. It's hard for me to keep up. We have new concepts like quiet quitting, quiet firing. Every 2 months or every 1 month there is a new term that I hear, which I have to understand. Okay, what does this mean? So we are living in a very dynamic situation with respect to what work means for us. Gone are the days, I think, when work used to be epicenter of everybody's life. uh, I was in an industry conference last week, and uh, somebody who heads HR of a logistics company, essentially providing support to the likes of Amazon and Flipkart, was saying that we tend to believe that work-life balance is something which only people in their mid 40s, 50s who have achieved a certain economic and financial stability strive for. But I have my delivery boys, when I tell them, okay, आज थोड़ा extra काम कर लो, we will pay you overtime. He says, no, this week I have earned enough. I want to go and spend time with my kids. He's probably just earning 15,000, 16,000, or little more than minimum wages, but he also wants to spend time with his family. So one thing that we have seen is our relationship with work is changing, workplaces are changing, and employment constructs are changing. So keeping in mind, we thought that why not, let's hear from industry experts what work 2.0 will look like. And hence, we thought of having a next conversation on this subject. So without further ado, I think I will hand this back to Rishi, who will curate this, what I'm sure will be a very interesting conversation for us, and take it from here.
Thank you very much, Sonal. And so many things you've said already about the behavioral aspect and the functional aspect of how the work is changing. So I will also just quickly ensure that our audiences are able to get familiar with the panel that we have today. So here are the introductions. Allow me to introduce Ketan Krishna to you. Ketan, welcome to the session today. And Ketan is based in Bangalore.
Thank
There's
you,
an
Rishi.
organization. Thank you. And high growth organization called Rento Mojo. And Ketan is currently the people and governance head over there. And interestingly, he's a person who also understands venture capital very well. He's a venture partner with Your Nest VC firm and quite a popular firm in the Indian corridors as well. So Ketan enjoys business partnering, and he says that HR tech is the part of the human capital and the human resource management which he enjoys the most. Ketan has also been with IDFC, Utsav Fashion, and Aditya Birla Group, and he's a certified life and personal growth coach. And it's interesting that he says that he works, mostly with ordinary folks, and the power of ordinary is something which he says is a power which always needs to be unleashed. And he's been an active blogger and a published author himself. His book Extraordinary is a self-help book that aims at providing personalized learning to each reader. So I'm sure people will have that book in their hand very soon. And along with you, Ketan, we are also excited about the next book that you're writing. So hope we hear that from you pretty soon.
Thank you, Rishi.
And thank you. Pleasure having you here. Let me introduce Dr. Shikha Kapoor to the audience and the panelists. And Dr. Shikha Kapoor is a professor of HR and organization behavior. And for aspirants like me who are pursuing a PhD, she is the head of the program of PhD in Amity University. And very, very diversified profile, being a corporate trainer, author, editor of the Amity Global HRM Review. And right now, she's holding that 3 decades of HR experience and helping academicians, consulting firms, corporates to evolve with the nature of work changes in the larger context. But hear this out. She's extensively also worked with the United Nations, with the International Labour Organization, esteemed universities in the NCR, Right Management, which is another HR organization, and Aisha Tractors, to name a few. So extremely, extremely experienced and broad experiences that she brings. And she's worked on multiple projects with IBM, and she's done a lot of work with Power Grid Corporation of India, career enhancement programs for Navras Tele Communications, and as ADB consultant has worked with USAID and World Bank project. And probably she works with her competences in team assessment, training, and development to make the work a better place with the way people understand the future of work. So Dr. Shikha, thank you very much. Your diversified experience will be extremely, extremely helpful to the people, and probably she might have dropped off for a while. Allow me to introduce Satender Sigadia. Satender is in Bombay, and we were talking about whether the rains are happy there or not nowadays. And Satyendra is currently with FMC Corporation. He's the head of HR for FMC India as well as Southwest Asia. And he's got more than 2 decades of experience and has very, very strong country leadership level experience and exposure both. And he's worked in IT, ITAS, services, manufacturing, and agrochemical sectors. Again, an extremely diversified profile. And looking at leadership, mergers and acquisitions, talent strategy, employee engagement, and rewards, I believe Satinder would have met probably all the challenges that we can see in a particular people-oriented profile, and I'm sure he would have mitigated them well. So we're going to learn a lot from Satinder's experience. He's been responsible. I mean, this is really illustrious that he's actually been life cycle responsible for 2,500 plus employees in a given organization, and we still have only 24 hours a day. So quite commendable to have that feat. And he's been from the Indian Defence Forces. He spent 6 years in Indian Army and has been a major. High regards to you as well. And he's had the opportunity to also represent the country in the United Nations Peacekeeping Force for 1 year. And going for your certifications, you have a manager mentor certification from Harvard. You're a certified assessor from Infosys BPM. You have been certified by United Nations Peacekeeping Force, and you're developing competencies and sharing those competencies on succession planning, leadership development, employee relations, and HR analytics. Satendra, thank you very much for being with us. Really appreciate you giving us this hour of yours today.
Thank you, Rishi. Absolute pleasure to be part of this.
Thank you. The pleasure is ours. And let me introduce Ms. Preeti Ahuja to you. Preeti, welcome to the panel today. And she's an HR leader at Atlas Copco in Pune, the same city where I am at this point of time. And she's got around 2 years or 2 decades of experience, again, in human resource management, talent management, training and development, employee relations. So I believe, all illustrious HR leaders have to go through the entire wheel and, take everything on them and move on with it. So welcome. And she's been recognized as the top 10 women chief people officers 2023 by Women Entrepreneur India. She's got awarded for Women Leadership of the year 2021 and Global Women Leader 2022 by World Women Leadership Congress. And that's a language that everybody wants to know here as well, where the HR heads actually talk about driving business priorities, and it's likewise on the other side as well. And that's her core area of interest as well, along with large-scale transformations, enabling effective HR strategies. And she's earlier worked with Peak, Alpha Laval, Lear Corporation, Emerson, and Larsen and Toubro. And Preeti is also quite certified as an individual who can build resilient leaders with effective coaching skills. She's certified in high impact presentation skills and personality and ability assessment courses, the OPQ and more. She holds an MBA degree from Balaji Institute of Modern Management, which is now a university, the Sri Balaji University in Pune, and has completed her executive development program certification on HR from XLRI Jamshedpur. Thank you very much, Preeti. We really look forward to enjoying today's conversation with you. Okay, so let's talk about what's happening in Work 2.0, and let me start my conversation initially with Ketan. So Ketan, when COVID happened, a little bit before that, people were talking about, can we work away from work and maybe we can connect to the internet to work. But then suddenly in the era of Work 2.0, attracting and retaining a new distributed workforce, hybrid becoming a reality rather than an option, and remote working becoming a natural way of working became very symbiotic. So in terms of the context of Work 2.0, how do you think these new ways of working, the new models of working will be looked upon as compared to traditional models, and how does the efficiency get derived? Kindly share your views on that with us, please.
Rishi, thank you so much, again for having me here. I'll take a step back and probably go back to some of my, career nugget. So I started in 2006 and I landed up in Mumbai. So first time in Mumbai. Initial 5 years, I think, if you've been in Mumbai, it teaches you a lot of discipline and time management. I was fresh out of college. I was reasonably disciplined, but I think there is where I learned how powerful and how important time management was. From just being okay with 5-10 minutes late to having a message in the life saying that a late is a late, right? Doesn't matter if it is 1 minute or 5 minutes. I think I was really thankful that I had that experience. So reaching office well before time, focusing on work, outcome, time was something that was very important. And in Mumbai, if you worked in Mumbai, 6:29 means 6:29. It's never 6:30, right? And that's how the city, trained me. So much so that I was then in the same company sent to North, and one of our units in North was completely haywire, right? No idea who was coming, when people were coming, what was happening, and I was literally sent like a warden to say, okay, go and set it right. And I did it for almost 2 years, and I was able to correct it. So, when I was growing up, time, discipline, availability in office, visual presence in office were becoming very, very important. Uh, Took a plunge, joined Utsav Fashion. It was a transition for me from a retail setup to, a tech product led setup. And I was carrying on these same principles in the tech and product company also. It backfired. It backfired like crazy. I remember my tech folks would come and say, why are we working 6 days a week? And I used to say, because our operation works 6 days a week, right? We all have to work 6 days a week. So that's a thought process that I was coming with. Came back to Mumbai, this time with a bank. Bank comes with additional level of discipline and regulatory compliance, where time is kind of even more essential. So, again, I was going through this conditioning. And then about 4.5 years back, joined a young startup called Vento Mojo. Day one, when I was, up to reach office, I called my team member who was, to prepare an induction for me. And I said, okay, what time do I reach office? So I was said, yeah, you can come around 11, 11:30. And I was like, okay, isn't that too late? And she said, no, most people come around that time. That was the first moment of change for me. I still reached at about 9. I was sitting there alone for 2 hours, and I kept on doing this for quite some time. And I just realized that, I was the odd person out there rather than, other people who would, essentially work from home, come to office, attend meetings, go. It was a massive, massive change for me. And I was struggling with it. I was not able to adapt to it. And then came COVID, literally locked into my houses. Office goer, very disciplined person, suddenly being put to home was a huge challenge for me. And but now today, when I look back, I don't come to office now because I've realized that change had so much value, which I was earlier ignoring. Okay. My focus started to happen on the work. I started to manage, things around me far better. And today, if you ask me, will I ever want to go to a full, 5 days, 6 days kind of a 9 to 5 or 7 office? I would not, because I've started to see value in this. And I'm glad that, this happened in my lifetime. Otherwise, I wouldn't have learned it. And when I look at it, there are 4 key pillars that anybody should focus on in building, the workplace 2.0. The first one is, custom it to the nature of the business. As we were talking about, Preeti talks about business partnering and, looking at business priority. It's a very important piece for human resources professionals. So it has to be custom to the nature of business. Now, a manufacturing unit may not have, a lot of changes that they can see, right? A legacy organization with 30 years, 70 years of culture would find it difficult to translate. If I'm into a service business or a product business or a delivery business or a sales business, and very important, what's the thought of the leadership, right? So that is important. So first is, as I say, custom it to the nature of the business rather than having a cookie cutter approach saying that, okay, this is a policy, do it, it is going to fail. The second is also to custom it to the stage of the business. Early stage companies where people are coming together, the thread of culture or the trust does not exist. There it is very, very important that there is more and more face time that happens. I moved to second stage where it's a very high growth business, people are getting hired, but your large part of, policies, cultural nuances are established, then you can operate in a hybrid setup any which ways, right? Because, the large part of the culture will ensure that people are getting, acquired or probably inducted in the organization. And the third is, if it's a very mature phase, I think there is a serious reconsideration of why, somebody should essentially come to office just for the heck of it, right? So the second, as I said, is custom to the stage of the business. Third, very important, is the maturity of your performance management machinery, right? Because this is a shift from time only to outcome, right? And not that it is new, right? Sales units, sales people have essentially been operating on targets, right? How much time do they put? They would, clock in something, nobody would care. If you're end of the day getting the Dhanda, as they used to say, or business, everything was secondary. I think it existed, but it's important to understand how mature is a performance system. Is it still valuing busyness, which is equivalent to time that you are available in the office or the clocking time? Then it is going to fail. If you are at that stage, your game plan has to be different. If you are a mature organization, and I could say, being a tech product led company at Rento Mojo, we have evolved to a phase where our goals are fairly clear. Numbers are very, very clear. We are very, very data driven. So an output is not very difficult to establish, also because of the nature of the business. So third part to be looked at in this design is maturity of performance system. And at the core, if I circle it, if I put it together, I think the future is all about personalization of the entire machinery or employee experience, right? We have heard of people, a lot of women employees resigning from a large organization because they decided work from home would not continue. I have 2 kids where work from home helps me save that 1-2 hours of travel and spend time with them, and probably or things that mattered. So probably the reason I was able to write a book because I was able to cull out that time, right? There are people who would want to come to office. We did not have an office at Rento Mojo per se during COVID. We took up a large office because our tech folks said, yeah, we need to come to office because we are now getting bored at home. So again, it is about how do you create personalized experience. And the only way personalization is going to happen is when we use technology, because technology is going to scale personalization. So 4 pillars: custom to the nature of the business, custom to the stage of the business, understand your performance system maturity, and focus on personalization. And a combination of these 2, I think, is going to prepare everybody for the 2.0 workplace that we have.
Okay, then it's been amazing. One thing which really struck me as a former sales individual is that we were actually not wanted in office at all. So somewhere that was a management practice to say, I mean, I was a sales professional and we were not wanted in office at all. Yeah. So I think that was the way. It was always in a way to say your role does not entitle you to be in office. So why do you have to just spend the resources of the office and just say that I came to office on that particular day? So you rightly mentioned it that we were already practicing it, but now it is being called in a better way or in a different name for that matter. And the pillars that you mentioned about the business dictates where you need to be probably has to be everybody's virtue rather than maybe gone are the days when the leaders calculate the amount of time you are in front of them. Now maybe they would calculate how much time did you give to the organization. So extremely important and relevant conversation, and thank you very much for that. And so I just hope you keep on getting that time to write more books, and the work that facilitates your supports. Any other leaders got anything to add to what Ketan mentioned? Okay, so let me pass on the conversation to Dr. Shikha, and let's understand her views, how she has been able to look at the future of learning in Work 2.0 from the industry perspective as well as the academia perspective. So Dr. Shikha, we have been hearing about 2 aspects specifically. So one aspect is about technology enabling learning, and we know technology will enable all kind of learning. But then there is learning which is self-directed, and then there is learning which comes because of the community. Now, looking at the way you see the lens of people freshly coming out of college and leaders into the industry, what models of learning you believe will be the most effective, considering that we have multiple models, whether it is self-directed or whether it is community-based? We would really appreciate your views on the ways of learning in Work 2.0.
If we see human brain, it has 2 sides, the left side and the right. The left side is convergent thinking, and
Yeah, I don't know if it is only me or is you're not able to hear.
Yeah, I think Dr. Shikha, you might want to without the video, maybe because of the bandwidth issue. it might help
Yeah.
in the transmission, because we are having issues listening to you.
I think, Rishi, maybe we can circle back to her and take the views of somebody else on the panel in the meantime.
Yeah, let me just park this question till the time the data gods help us in due course of time. But let me then, quickly jump to a conversation with Satyendra. So Satyendra, let's also take a cue from what Sonal mentioned, that actually an individual who might not be probably earning at the top of the pyramid can actually come back and say, I've done myself, I'm done for the week, I've earned as much as I have to earn, is itself a change in the context of employment. And we've heard people coming to say, I run a freemium kind of a career where I'll not charge for the first project, but I'll probably charge for more. And then, terminology which I learned even, from Sonal as well, saying that I've got a jobless career, which means I'll take something which drives my passion more than my need. So when you have people coming into an organization who are from multiple generations, some who really why for the career because of stability, and then an entirely different generation which says I'm freemium, I'm jobless in a career, and I'm doing a wait and hope. What are these implications for employers? How do the employers really, balance this whole, dimension of the evolution which is playing out between semi-skilled employed, highly skilled employed, and all these people trying to have different working models? Over to you for your thoughts, please.
Sure, Rishi. Thank you. And very valid points on how the demand or the view of people towards a job is changing. Right? I mean, and you can see that through generations, because earlier you would have our own parents who would just take one job and be there forever, because job security used to be a big issue. There were no jobs. If you have a government job, you please stick there. Doesn't matter if you're not getting hikes, but at least you have job security. And if you look at from that point of view, the generation gaps, earlier, how would you define a baby boomer to later millennial to Gen Zs to, now others as well? The gap, the amount, the years is reducing because of the change in the technology and environment is happening so fast that you now in every 10 years, you have a different generation coming up, and you can already start feeling a generation gap between you and your own friends who are maybe 10 years younger. Right? And this is predominantly happening because of the changing environment and how you perceive certain things. Overall, if you look at it from the point of view of organization, first thing should always be there that like we said, I mean, there were very valid points from Ketan also of saying, you keep the business in focus first, right? Employees are going to be extremely important for each organization, but not at the cost of business suffering and not achieving the results, right? You can have happy employees, but not a growing organization. You can have engaged employees, not getting all the satisfaction which they need, but still they are engaged and growing for themselves as well, right? So there's, if we just look at from the point of view of only the benefits and at the cost of the business, then no organization will survive for long. You might give those frills to them and then later on say, you can see all around us, right? I mean, from Facebook to Amazon to others who are having job cuts now because of certain business issues. So as long as the business is doing well, you can always look at it. So first and foremost would be keeping the business at the focus of saying what we need to achieve out of it. Now there are no horses for there's no set standard way of doing or dealing with the situation on jobs. It's going to be horses for courses. Like one thing which always comes to my mind is change management. Change is the only constant which we talk about. So look at it from the point of view of saying which job, like you just said, salespeople were never required to come to office. It still remains relevant today also. So in our company itself, the sales and marketing team during the COVID itself, they were working through different hybrid models. They were never required to come to office. We also have a manufacturing plant where we had to have people still working in the plant. We could not let them go and work from home. That's not a possibility which can happen. What can you do? Flexibility of saying what is the skeletal staffing which you would require people to come. just to ensure that the business is running. And because it was all about surviving and excelling, right? So, and again, it all comes down to the necessity. If your necessity is there, necessity is the mother of invention. You will think of different ways of getting things done. Earlier, people could never, we all knew about work from home. I used to work in IT companies as well, and they knew about it, but they didn't want to experiment because there was no need. The survival was not at stake. When during the lockdown that happened, they were all suddenly so open to see or saying what can work and what cannot work. So when it comes to freelancers, now are called gig employers, right, or employees, where they would do certain jobs for certain people. But the only thing which we need to understand is that there should not be a conflict of interest. All these things are legally right, because as you saw, the moonlighting cases were coming up. People are having two jobs with a similar kind of industry, and sharing those, information with each other can be really harmful to the business. Again, coming from the legal and from business point of view, if it's not helping an organization and leading to harm, then no amount of these benefits would help. So people should, when you are having an organization, you keep the focus and then look at what possibilities are there. Of course, you should allow work from home to certain people if that is possible. It's not harming the overall culture, because you can't have certain people in the office not coming and certain coming, and still the information isn't there. So what kind of flexibilities can you have? For example, we can say, okay, 3 days you come to office, 2 days you pick, and then you can work from there. Because certain times you would also need people to understand the culture, need to work together to understand where the company is going. The virtual platform, like right now we are just talking, right? And we just faced a glitch where we are not able to get Dr. Shekhar. What do we do? Right? So you will face these challenges as well. This would not have happened if all 6 of us were there in the same and were also addressing the people. But look at the advantage. We are now reaching out to so many people who are right now online with us and talking, right? But still we could not have gotten all of them to one office. So no, there's no set way of working, but the only thing which you should think of is we should be flexible, and we should always be adaptable to the change which is happening. Because you have seen organizations coming and go. Companies like Kodak, who never thought that a phone would take away their business. There are so many companies who just did not recognize the change was happening around them, and they stayed rigid to one way of working. There's not going to be one way of working. You'll have to have places. You will have people who would say, I want to work for passion. Although I still feel that percentage is still very low as compared to the people who overall would require jobs, right? So we should have that flexibility. We just should understand, okay, certain roles we can say, okay, we'll hire you on contract. We'll hire you for 3 months. You get an assignment done. After that, you go and join somewhere else. We should have a problem, because how is it helping the business again? Because the business keeping a person idle and on bench like it used to happen in IT companies is still not helping. You're paying for them, they are non-productive. You would rather hire them for 3-4 months, let them do the assignment and go ahead and do it with someone else. So as long as we take care of the interest of the organization and everything is legal, we should look at all these options, because this will keep happening. This is the change. Like we said, the generation gap is reducing the span. Every 5 years, we might now start seeing certain things totally changing, and we were never aware of things coming in. So HR, as a partner of business, should always advise the business on saying what all are the possibilities. You should be the voice of the people, and also be the voice of the organization to say why are we doing what we are doing. As long as we do that, it is fine. You will never be able to satisfy everyone. Let's be honest about it. No matter how many engagement initiatives you bring about, you will still have people with some or the other issues. That will happen. But let it be progressive. As long as you have the right intent and you have a good idea of what's happening around, you can keep making these changes. And you will find places for freelancers. You will have places for these freemiums who would charge more later on. But that also happens now as well. So from the point of view of high skill versus low skill, it's also about reskilling. A lot of companies do not let go of the people and then ask them to do certain other jobs so that they can stay reskilled. So that's another thing which is going to be important. Not only looking at saying who are low skilled and high skilled, You reskill certain employees and see if they would want to work in certain areas. That also will help them to basically retain their jobs as well. So that's, I just want to summarize in the order of saying, as long as you have business in focus, you are adaptable to the environment, and look at solutions for different, you are open to different solutions for different set of people. I think we have enough scope for people to practice all these passions as well as profession, how they would want to perceive it.
Wonderful, Satyendra. I think one takeaway I also had is that just because there's a model which is coming does not mean the model will be adapted and will be successful. So we should also have our agendas clear to say something will work, something will not work, but the organizational resilience and stability comes first. And there are some interesting things you mentioned. One is that, do we really have a legal framework around all the models which exist today? So I think a lot of lawyers also will be happy to listen to the conversation to say, oh my God, there are so many models, so why don't we have different laws coming out for those models? And generation changing every, say 8 to 10 years. That means at my age, I'm actually running with, 5 generations. I have to catch up with 5 generations. It's not the other way around. I think that also is something which
Can I
will
add on here? Sorry for the interruption.
Absolutely.
So what I
Please.
was saying was the left side and the right brain, they have different functions in learning. So one is convergent thinking is the left side, and the right side is divergence in thinking. That is out of the box learning. So one has to be a lifelong learner to enhance oneself. Creativity is the need of the hour, and creativity leads to innovation. So when we talk about self-paced learning, so being in the academic front, yes, during pandemic also, there were many mock courses, MOOC, mock courses, which were launched in India for the students, NPTEL and SWAYAM. These were the courses where online free certification courses are done. Even in Harvard, I myself, I am doing a certification course in R. So R is the technical side, because I'm an HR professional and I want to know more about IT and the transformation, digitalization, because that is the need of the R, and we also have to outgrow with the need. So even EDX, harvarduniversity.com, you can get Stanford, MIT. They're also going for online self-paced courses where they have a time limit. Plus, they have some assessment exercises, and it is self-paced. And according to that, you can learn wherever you are free, and then you have to do assessments, and then you get certification for that. So that is self-based learning, where it enhances you even in the corporate world, because I myself, I was working for International Labour Organization, then I worked for Eicher Tractors, and you say work-life balance with family and work-life balance, I shifted into academics. So I had to do PhD. So PhD is also self-based learning. Now you have certain exams during the first 6 months which you have to clear, but it is self-based learning. So you have to research on your own. So you can say self-based learning is you in organization, it is an entrepreneurship where you are entrepreneurs for the organization. Now community-based learning, if you talk, is team of where policy also come into play, where community which so work being done on that, so that the employees also want to engage something for the community, for the social values they want. Because after pandemic, people became very empathetic towards the need of other people. So when you talk about Maslow's theory, it was originally when we did masters, then it was just a 5 level of hierarchy. Now hierarchy is being changed now. It was 7, now it is 8. Changes have occurred. If we say the 4th stage is the self-esteem, then there is a cognitive need which is coming among beings, that is to increase your knowledge, to self-govern, and that is coming up. Like you were saying, you are doing a PhD at a certain. So what made you you learn this? Okay. So I think as director of the MIT University, so we have topics at
Dr. Shukla, I am still finding breaks in your conversation. I believe there is still something that needs to be done about the network. Okay. I think we've just had some periods of the voice break already. So let me just at least summarize what Dr. Shikha and Satinder have mentioned. So what we heard from Satinder was about the fact that people have the luxury to choose whatever model they want, but does not mean every model is successful.
Yeah. So you can say community for education line, community-based learning. We have HVCO. What is HVCO? Is human value community outreach, which we are in building in the students, and they go to NGOs to work, and there's a symbiotic relationship which is there, which is need of the hour for the corporate and the community-based. So both learnings are different. One is a practical learning, it's an integrated learning, and one is your self-motivation, which takes you ahead. And I think so self-based learning is also important because it will help the corporates also into more progression and innovation.
All right, thank you for that, Dr. Shikha. I'll just quickly probably summarize our conversation. One part of it is that when you look at an individual who has an urge to learn, it's not just that the organization has to tell that individual that you need to learn. So self-paced learning or self-directed learning is becoming very important. But one interesting thing which I picked up from your conversation was that you're actually looking at getting certified in R. So it is about HR leaders also needing to embrace the future of technology so that we are able to come closer to the way the world is looking at data and analysis. So looking at your conversation that self-paced learning is as important as probably organizational directed learning, and Satinder talking about the focus on being productive employees. While being productive, they should also be happy employees and engaged employees, but a productive employee will always be the need of an organization, and learning and development will also change because of the generational contours that are changing. And probably we should acknowledge and accept that forefathers have also said change is the only constant, but now it's the ability to realize that we must really chase and challenge the change. So thank you very much, and Wi-Fi God, please be stable for some more time. It's always important for the data to continue. But let me pick up a conversation with Preeti, and let's look at something which is very horizontal. So while there is productivity and there is employee engagement, and then there is working out models, and there are hybrid workings, but diversity, gender neutrality, and inclusion has always been talked about in corridors of various forms and formats of working. But maybe we have done too much of conversations on gender diversity and gender diversity, but little on inclusion. So Preeti, we would really need your inputs on what do you think is the 2.0 of diversity and inclusion. Will there be stronger focus on overall workplace attitude and technology for inclusion? Will the organizations really invest in those digital tools and communication platforms, which traditionally can make people with disabilities say more productive?
Yes. Thank you for this great question. And I will break it down into two parts. One is let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then I'll talk more about how Atlas Copco we are driving it. And then again, with few examples, how inclusion is driven in the organization. And then how technology is now, definitely we all already talked about technology, that how technology is playing a role in all the areas of work-life integration. So let me just start with how we define, first of all, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the organizations. So for organization, diversity and inclusion are powerful enabler to create an environment of pride and respect for their people. As we all agree that greater diversity and inclusion environment drive better decision making. And you must have seen in your organization that the way we bring diverse people, they come with a different thought process, and there is a different of opinion, and that help in innovation as well. And that innovation increase the organization agility, because nowadays we are talking more about resilience and agility, and for that definitely we need a diverse people coming with different backgrounds and then providing their different thought process. Even there was a survey done in Forbes, and Forbes also suggests that with diverse and inclusive organizations likely to generate up to 30% more revenue per employee and being twice as likely to exceed financial target. So this has already been surveyed from the organization, and that it itself is giving a result that yes, with increase in diversity, equity, inclusion, there is a definitely a 30% more revenue generation in the organization. Now I'll talk more about how at Atlas Copco what we are driving, and when we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, what we mean by here in the organization. So in Atlas Copco, like we believe a culture that encourages diversity of mind and inviting all voices to the table. And then we believe that diversity a business critical driver. So again, it is not only a HR driven. When we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, it is not HR initiative. Let's understand that is a business initiative that has to be driven from top level. Everyone has to be part of those goals and strategy. So it is aligned with our organization goals and strategy when we are driving diversity, equity, inclusion initiative in the organization, and to capture global growth opportunities and explore the full talent pool. So what we do, we strive for increased diversity and aim to work with inclusion and the sense of belonging in all aspects of our operations. So nowadays, like what happened, it is now not DEI, it is DEIB. You must have seen that we are not just talking about diversity, equity, inclusion, but belonging. That is again become a very, very critical part of the organization, where you ensure that your people feel safe, they feel valued, they feel respected in the organization. They are like they can come as a authentic themselves, and they can share their opinion freely. That is what inclusion is all about, and it's a like fair treatment in the organization. Again, every industry have a different kind of culture. Again, we have to look at how we can provide an ecosystem to individual where they can feel safe and open up and have a open conversation and a fair treatment. So at Atlas Copco, our vision for Atlas Copco to represent a group with diversity of mind, personality, experiences, culture, and gender. So to be a workplace that offer equal opportunities for equal talent. So when we talk about equality and equity here, again, like what we do, we review all our policies and procedures and then make it gender neutral for all. So it become a for inclusive for everyone in the organization. And that is the practice, like we review in every year all the policies, make it more inclusive. We use it more inclusive languages in all the policies. Again, like nowadays you have seen, like when we put a job advertisement also, we are driving it more inclusive language when we are posting any position. Now, like when we talk about inclusion, so how we define inclusion. So inclusion is all about how we behave. So we have a choice in how we behave. We have a choice in how we treat others. We have choice to be respectful. We have choice to get to know people different from us. We have choice to expand our network beyond people who like us. That is inclusion. And as we talked about, like most of the companies still feel diversity is just limited to gender. And they set the goals with the gender diversity hiring. But again, when we have to talk at a long-term perspective, we have to look at the equal opportunities, how we can create equal opportunities regardless of age, disability, ethnicity, gender identity, nationality, political opinion, religion, and sexual orientation. So we have to be very mindful when we are defining, when we are writing down diversity, equity, and inclusion policies within the organization, and ensuring our from leaders to all the employees went through this unconscious bias training. They understand what it means at each level, because everyone is playing a very critical role in driving the inclusion. It is again not just limited role of a HR, or nowadays we also have a position called diversity positions in the organization as a head of diversity and inclusion. But again, it is responsible for every individual to drive this kind of culture. Again, what we do to increase the diversity and inclusion in the organization, we are right now participating in LGBTQ plus job fairs. Also, like, we do hire PWD talent for our internal roles. We are creating an ecosystem within the organization where it's just not hiring, but ensuring that when they join the organization, they get the right kind of environment in the organization. So again, like, also, like, we had a campaign for women who took a break. So we hired women back to work after a career break, and again providing them, upskilling them, and giving them a right career path, mentoring and coaching within the organization. Again, our focus is on employee resource group, where volunteer networks that unite people, common experiences, and then they come together and work. And we do have a Women India network where everyone come together, share their experiences, learn from each other. So these are some of the best practices talking about how to drive more inclusive culture within the organization. Coming to the second part, as you mentioned about technology, definitely, like, we all now using the technology. And let's start with the recruitment itself, where artificial intelligence is already playing a big role. So when we doing a sourcing, or even from the job posting, so we are using AI tools to reduce our sourcing of the candidate pool. Again, it's like we are removing at a level of biasness also when we are hiring, and then we are getting a good talent pool from using AI tools. Even AI tools support in enhancing transparency and communication, what we have seen, like, while using it in different levels in the organization. And also, like, AI is used in video conferencing system to automatically reduce noise and adjust light conditions. As you talked about the disabilities, how we can ensure the inclusive culture for them. So with the use of latest technology, people with disabilities can read, write, document, communicate with other, search information online very easily with the tools and techniques. And again, as an organization, we have to provide that ecosystem and platform to all our employees so they can utilize and they can work on their full potential. So that is the thought process what I have about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Thank
That
you.
was actually wonderful, Preeti. And let me just highlight a few things which I noted. One is that a pride and respect-oriented individual will always be more engaged and productive. So I think you had stitched it very well to say that it's not just about making an employee inclusive, it is about ensuring the employee has the respect and pride, which makes the individual more engaged and productive. And I think statistically, it's a hands-down winner. We know when you mentioned that the financial performances of organizations which are more inclusive and diverse is always better. And that is something I think we all acknowledged. And as a group, I'm sure we've also got a learning of the DEIB now, where belonging also becomes a very, very important coordinate of diversity, equality, and inclusion. One more thing which probably is important for all of us to understand is that every organization cannot look at DEIB in the same way, because culturally every two organizations are different. So we need to ensure that one shoe does not fit all. There are customizations which are done, and we have a choice how to treat others. I think it was very, very valid, and that's where the business drives each other to say that we have a choice to expand our network. We have a choice to deal with the kind of people we want to deal with. And your focus area of specifically being in gender neutral job fairs and PWD talent inclusion appears to be very, very commendable. And last but not the least, what you mentioned is that technology will remain everywhere, but the human element will always matter. So I believe it was extremely, extremely heartwarming to understand and look at your opinions over there.
If I may add a different dimension, do we have
Yes,
time?
Ketan, around 5 more minutes.
Okay, so I'm coming more from a younger organization perspective. So to give you a context, I'm the oldest employee at Rent to Mojo. That's how I was the youngest in IDFC, and I'm the oldest in Rent to Mojo. Now, the entire diversity, inclusion, belongingness is going to shift fundamentally in my view, and I learned it from the younger folks, because what at least happened with me is the society was not very inclusive. So we as an organization took a mandate to bring out that change. Now, when I speak to these generations, they have grown in an ecosystem where they have friends, family members, and connects, which is beyond the social tax that has got created, right? And I could realize that they do not have those biases that possibly I was carrying out the earlier generation. So for younger organizations, this is going to be easier, because they don't even see that as a problem. They're saying, why do you need to force something to come in which is naturally in there? I think it's good news, because this workforce is going to come in more and more, and this will possibly become easier, is what my sense is. Impact on productivity outcome, of course we have enough data. How will it shape up? We don't know, because I think this will become a norm as we go ahead. And if I would sum it up, what I learned from them is valuing people for who they are and not what they are, right? It seems to be something that they understand, and I think this is fundamentally going to shift the entire chapter of DEI and belongingness and take it to a next level. But I just thought I'll add that from a younger organization perspective.
No, it's definitely a very, very viable perspective, because who you are and what you are, I think we also should look at these two elements differently rather than being opinionated and biased. And in the interest of time, I will just take a minute to probably converge on the conversations we've had. And goes without saying that we are extremely, extremely grateful and thankful to everybody's participation today. And with Ketan, we had a conversation about how do we reimagine the workplace. So the contours of saying that, hey, something has already been happening when people are not working in office and delivering. Why are we making such a big issue of it today? So let's look at naturally business first and wherever everybody has to come from. Dr. Shikha spoke about her own ability to now look at an HR individual learning R and looking at technology as an analyzer, but self-analysis of learning is becoming as important as community-based learning. And Satyendra, I think, gave a very, very important perspective in terms of the generational contours and how the organizational priorities are shifting. And along with that, the models of working will shift, but the organization will always come first. And all models are not always going to be successful. So some will be more successful than the other. And Preeti gave us a very, very, I would say, serious and diverse opinion about ensuring that diversity, equality, inclusion, and belonging are not a one shoe fits all kind of an approach, but it is customized to the kind of people we want to ensure that we empower and provide in our network. And eventually, we all collectively believe that some part of our conversations will also go into the larger context of what happens to the well-being of an individual. And predominantly, that's something we all need to ponder over a period of time. That when so many transactions and changes are happening in the workplace, what will happen to an individual's mind, work-life balance, and integration of work in the way life moves ahead. So that is something probably we can look at another conversation at another time. However, today, for whatever illustrious inputs we have received, I believe the audiences would have also gained a lot of merit. And once again, with the panelists, thank you very much, Sonal and the GI team, to ensure that we are able to come together digitally, doing something to tell the world that the change is constant and we need to be abreast with it. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be part of this conversation, Sonal.
Thank you very much, all the panelists. Rishi, once again, on behalf of GI Group. And I think I'll it was heartening to hear Ketan say, ending on a positive note, that it will get easier. You know, a lot of things will get very interesting. I won't say they'll get tougher, but definitely if some things will get easier with the evolution of work, evolution of workplaces and new generations coming in, even if, 5 years is the new generation gap difference, I think it'll be, I'm looking forward to it personally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonal, Rishi, thank you, Priti, thank you, Dr.
Thank
Shikha.
you.
Bye.
For everybody's time, really appreciate it.
Everyone, have a good time.